All right, so this is the first time I've been able to cover anything from SC Zidane or Zidane, if you want to pronounce it properly. I always said Zidane as a kid, so it will always be Zidane in my head. I don't pronounce it like Zinedine Zidane. I say Zinedine Zidane. That's his name. But the FF9 character's name is Zidane in my head. So apologize if I say that badly as we go. That said, this is obviously a battle of the heavyweights. I think for the past 5 or so months, these are maybe the two players that have overall played the best. Obviously, Tezuka and Piggy Man have very good claims to that. But these are two tremendous players, and I'm curious to see what happens. The rule set I came up with, I did not think it through. Boo me, shame on me. Is same plus combo. I picked that because removing plus wall mitigates the advantage of first turn. I wanted a balanced set. Enclosed plus wall really helps for those last turn devastating combos. Here it's much harder to guarantee them. You have to coordinate cards a lot better rather than just have a really powerful sweeper. So I'm happy about that part, but I didn't think the next part through. Levels 5 and 6 must use 3 level 5s, 2 level 6s, and I believe every card must have a 1 or a 2 on it. And I didn't think about the impact 1s or 2s would have here, but it really forces people towards kind of 7/7 for 1s, 8/8 for 2s, that kind of card. So I expect to see a lot of 7/7s and 8/8s here in general. That said, with these two specific players, I think other stuff is going on. I saw Deli all talking about hand ideas before the match started, and he was strongly considering using rares, and also some cards that might have some more dynamic power. You know, stuff like 7/6/5/4s loses dynamic power without plus wall. The 6/4/7/5 no longer hit 8s as well, and the 7/4 doesn't hit 7s. But something like 7/6/6/1 or 7/6/6/2 he was definitely considering. It's hard not to go with 7/7s and 8/8s here, but that might make some late game reads quite possible because what people have is somewhat locked in. But I think I did pick too narrow a set, but that might create an interesting feature in closed if it might mean predictable hands are predictable. On the Akiyama side, though, I think he is someone who makes hands both for open and closed that have unpredictable features to them. One thing is when you give him a set like you can use 2 level 6s and 3 level 5s, a lot of people, Vid said this in his interview, I tend to do this, will automatically think, okay, opposite corners for the high levels. That way, if I keep them for last, I've kept a lot of balance in the hand, or I have, when one goes down, the other has maximal power facing it. And Akiyama is not tied to hands in that way. We do see a rare from Deli. He really wanted to follow in, specifically, Pupu was the most likely one, because that's a card Nimloth like to use. And Deli has mentioned that more than any other player, Nimloth is the player he has modeled himself after. So I think excited to get to use that card. If you're going to have a card like that, I do think there's a real draw to using it immediately. While Insane Plus, it can certainly take some things that the opponent doesn't expect. You could certainly start in 6, and the opponent tries to play safely in 3 or 9, and you can just take it, right? Think of it as closer to a no-rule set. In general, I think cards like this you want out of your hand, especially if you have synergies with them, and easily could. A 7/1/6/6 might have play using the 1, that 3 maybe can plus wall an 8, or plus an 8. Stuff like that can be viable. I think this could be a nice setup, and this could have been the plan with his hand. I know he spent a little while thinking about cards. I don't know how much he was setting up synergies. Akiyama, as I was saying, if you think of this as a set where everyone's going to use 2/8/8 corners, I think Akiyama is about as likely as anyone to have the 2/8/8 corners be in neighboring corners rather than opposite. So 1 and 3 rather than 1 and 9. And because, if you see 1 and 1, the next could be in any of 3, 7, or 9, if he's even going that direction, I think that makes him usefully unpredictable on a set like this, and I would have difficulty making reads against him. Also, Akiyama tends not to load up on pure power cards. I haven't seen him play many closed hands, but in open hands, he will pick powerful cards, but he generally won't he's not a hand maximalist in the way some others are. And in the finals of Triad Wars against me, he did put together a hand that I thought was just like totally sent me spiraling. He found a way to fit all the power cards in such an effective way. I desperately snuck out a tie, and then I spent like hours that night trying to figure out what I wanted to do against this hand, because it was the kind of hand I had been trying to build but had not put together the ideal version of, and I thought he put together the ideal, and I didn't think I could fight that. I considered stealing it, but all the hands I was coming up with seemed worse versions of what he was doing. So I ended up going, I can't do this, I need a new hand concept, and trying to find that. I don't think he ever ran the hand back again, though. He is someone who moves from hand to hand. He is happy to use cards that aren't the most natural of fits, but generally give him directional power and are cards he likes. I think he's quite an interesting hand builder in a way that I would expect. If you hear sniffling, that's the cat, not me. In a way I would expect to be quite effective and difficult to read in closed. Now, we've seen him play some closed hand games before, talking more about Akiyama because, Deli's been around for much, much longer. One thing, in TTAC, I remember watching the semifinals. It was the semifinals, right? Yeah, the semifinals between him and Chickeny. God, you're a sniffly girl. Don't knock over the mic. I'm gonna mute the mic for a sec. No, okay, she didn't knock it over. Good, we're good. In TTAC, I remember watching his match versus Chickeny, and I thought it was over, and then he didn't have the card at the end to sweep in a way it looked like he would. It was a weird match of close. The cards never lined up right, and so that he's good at using different cards is by no means a guarantee. So this is a really interesting move. Really interesting move, because the default here is the most powerful number should be an 8, which means if Deli takes in 9, he is potentially locking that in, which means one of two things is happening. Either Akiyama also has a rare. Now, I don't know the level 5 rares very well. I think it's Pupu, Power Seraph, but maybe Go-Go is one, 2822, but that wouldn't capture. I think if Akiyama has a recapture, it has to be Pupu. Now, if Deli reads that and has something like an 8318 himself, and he can go in 9, force Akiyama to go in 7, and play that 8318 in 4, that could be game over, right? He's capturing. The only way to capture an 8 is to overpower it there, and that is very susceptible to combo. So I think there's a chance Deli can make a really hard read here and actively punish this. Counterpoint. The card Deli wants to put in 9 may well be 8318. He can't use it in both 9 and 4. And the other thing Akiyama might be saying is, I have a ton of combo potential given what you put in 5 against cards you could put in 9. If Akiyama has an opposite 8-8 corner, or he has the 8-8 corner for 3, he could very easily have an 8 facing down, which means he can take anything below an 8. And so all he needs to do is have a plus against an 8, and that's pretty easy to have. And if Deli takes a risk here, Deli could be lost immediately. And if Deli doesn't take a risk here, Akiyama threatens to go in 9 next turn, potentially locking 8 in. And I think that could be a pretty powerful effect too. So this is a very interesting move. I am not by any means an expert on closed same plus combo. So I'm kind of saying what I see, but not able to evaluate whether this is a good risk or not. It seems to me a very high risk move, right? At its best, Deli can't touch it, and Akiyama can go in 9, and he is locked in 8 in a really useful way, right? He has created something potentially safe. This also makes me think, maybe you don't want to use your 8-8s on 8-8 corners. Maybe it would be best to have 8-8s verticals or horizontals, right? If Akiyama had, Iguion, 8282, or however that card's pronounced, he could have just put it in 4 and said, this is safe. Sure, you have to be fearful of combos at the end, but I don't think all that fearful. It's hard to set up. Because say the final move, you go in 4 and the final move is your opponent in 1, most likely. You're playing the card in 2, and in a world of 8/8s and 7/7s, basically you have to just put out something that's not an 8, and you're very unlikely to get comboed there. So I think, man, I think this is a very interesting play. Again, I really don't know how good it is. It uses a level 6 early. I think Akiyama's range of potential cards in his hand is very, very large. So it's very hard for Deli to take a grab at 9. If he's playing someone he knows is going to run like all 8/8 corners and 7/7 corners, then it can be easier to go for 9. But against an Akiyama, I think it's scarier because it's hard to read him on a card. I would expect Deli to go in 3 here in a vacuum, because 3 is the square that can control 9, and Akiyama's threat is to go in 9. So my guess is 3, but 9 is very plausible. Obviously, the other two most common squares are 1 or 2. I think playing in 7 with an 8 facing up looks kind of weird, but if you have combo potential against 9, it might be really good because that 8 facing up might just be, I mean, very likely is safe, right? We've already seen one of Akiyama's level 8s. The only way he can plus you is if his other is like 8/8-1-3, which would be very weird to run at the same time. If anyone really strong would, it is Akiyama, or something like 3/1-8/8. So I think 7 actually is somewhat defensible. I hope Deli doesn't time. He sometimes doesn't refresh while thinking. He goes in 1. Now, a couple interesting things here. 1, we see a card that potentially plays quite well with Pupu, right? Can use the 3. 2, we see him go in 1, which is not a square I was drawn to. But this makes me think there's a decent chance his other level 6 is another 8/8. Which means if Akiyama goes in 9 and doesn't have an 8 facing out, and it's hard for him to have an 8 facing out, between the 3 corners his other 8/8 could be, only one of them has an 8 facing out. And Deli potentially is a combo against the 8, and anything else he can take with a safe 8 facing out himself. I don't have the card list brought up, so I can't start making guesses as to what he has. I did think for a sec, could this be a pairing with Power Seraph? Because Power Seraph can land in 4. But Power Seraph doesn't land so well in 2, and I don't think you can use 2 rares. I think it just leaves your hand so weak, and you're so desperate to get them out quickly. Power Seraph actually is coverage against both 7 and 9. Very interesting. You have to assume Deli has a plus in 2, but if you're Akiyama, if you don't have the capture in 2, that's not too scary because Deli is very unlikely to play in 4, right? Anything in 4, you kind of capture, you lock in cards, right? If it has an 8 facing out, Deli is risking, I think, a whole lot there. So I think this is not a particularly scary move. That doesn't mean it's not good, but yeah, I was gonna say, I think you just go in 9. And now, based on what we've seen from Deli, it seems there's a really good chance of an 8/8 non-corner that can flip that and be safe. So I would expect Deli to take this here. One thing scary is if it's something like an 8/1-8/3, that might be Deli's capture card for 2. And you start running into spots where if Deli's last 2 cards are 7/7 corners, and Akiyama can, for instance, play in 4 with a 7 down, you could have 7 as a dead square. And that could be really, really bad. Similarly, if Akiyama can play in 2 after that with a 7 out, and you have 7/7s, then 3 could be a dead square. So I think if you have the 8/8, you want to take. But I think this becomes a dangerous position. You also have to be really afraid that Akiyama has a plus specifically in 4 and can use that to control 2. As I said, I think taking away plus wall helps second turn a lot, And so this is not a first turn advantaged set, particularly. I think it's hard to go in 4. It's hard to go in 2. Sometimes you have force ties in 3, but I don't think that's the case here with plus wall off. So I think Deli's probably going in 6 here, and I think he goes in 6 with a 7-7. Okay. Now there's some chance Akiyama has the 8-8-4-3. Though based on the cards Deli's shown, Deli could easily have something with the same number left and right and combo play against that. On the other hand, if Akiyama has 4, but if I had to bet whether Akiyama has 4, I think I'd bet against. I think it's hard for Akiyama to have 4. Now, based on what we've seen a level 6 that goes naturally in 9, and a level 4 that I'm going to call a card, a level 5 that I'm going to call a card for 4, right? It's probably closest to being a card for 1 as a corner, but generally is good at everything but going left. So we haven't seen anything that lands in 3 well. So we're likely to see that. So the real a big question is the card for 3 an 8-8 or a 7-7? It's a pretty big risk, or a pretty big difference, I think. I think the safest thing to do, it depends where his 8 is. I still think the 8-8 is probably for 3 or 7, not for 1, if there's another 8-8. And again, I think there's a really good chance of it, but I don't even know. You know, there could be like an 8-7-1-5 or something like that. There are cards that have 1s and 2s that aren't 8-8s. But I think he has an 8-8, and I think it's for 3 or 7. If the 8-8 goes for 7, then Deli probably plays in 4, and you really gotta have 2. So if Akiyama doesn't have 2, I think it's hard to go in 7. Even if Deli doesn't have the capture in 4, I think there's a good chance he plays in 4. Not guaranteed, because actually if you go in 7, Deli might have the setup in 3, and he might have had a big setup in 1. That might have been why he went in 1, is he has 1 card for both spots. No idea what that card would be. No idea. Like a I don't know, 4-6-8-3. No, this doesn't exist. So I have no idea how he could have 2 and 4 with both squares. 7 makes sense to me. I think you could try to defend in 2 and 4 if you don't have 3, but that's very risky because Deli needs 1 capture to tie, and you risk getting comboed horribly, and 2 captures to win, and he does have a high level sitting out there. Still has level 6. Akiyama is saying he has 4. He didn't have 2, but he has 4. Now, if Deli has the 8-8 for 7, he can go in 3. He goes up 6-4. Akiyama combos 2 things back. Akiyama 6-4, but your 8-8 is guaranteed a capture. However, if you have the 7-7, you are not guaranteed a capture. And I have no idea what Deli has. I like these kind of slide moves when available. I was assuming there wasn't a slide because I didn't really think Akiyama had either of 2 or 4. But now he is saying very aggressively he does have that. Now, almost certainly Deli can go in 3 without comboing. Deli does not want to combo here, right? If he goes in 3 and 2 flips 5 and he's susceptible to combos, then he must combo back on last turn or lose. On the other hand, if he has something good going up, 2-4-8-8 exists. 2-4-8-8 is a card, and it's a card Akiyama would use in pairing with 8-3-1-8. Does that hand make any sense, though? He's shown 8-3-1-8, so he has 6-6-7-2 and 6-2-6-7, kind of a pair, right? If he has 8-3-1-8 and 2-4-8-8, like, the last card has to be something so similar to 6-6-2-7 to balance all that power going left. But if he has a card for 7, then the last card has to be so far down, maybe. But less so, I think. 2488 is the card coming to mind. But also you shouldn't come up with what's the worst case scenario. They must have that card. But I'm not sure what else there is. 3188 might exist. 2488 might be a level 7, actually. It could be either. Like, Fusion Raijin is 2884, and I think that's a level 6. I might just be wrong. Interesting game. It's hard to commentate on closed. I hope I've done an okay job here. Akiyama is saying he is 4, and if he is 4, I think he's in good shape. Now, if Deli has combos everywhere and can go in 7 and keep a card for 3 and 4, he wins on the spot. But with the numbers facing out, like the 2 Akiyama, that's so incredibly unlikely. So I think Deli plays in 3. Tries to keep high stuff out. This is tough. And it would have been tough with an 8 out from 3 as well. It's hard to leave 3 open, even though Akiyama probably doesn't have it. But we've seen a card that could have it. 2838 is a card on the board that does hit 3. Now, Deli almost certainly has another 7 or 8 facing up in his hand. It's hard to imagine a hand build that doesn't here. But because we've seen basically one neutral to right card and then an up down and a side to side, we don't know which pair of corners he has, or if he has another pair of corners. Hard to read what Deli has here. And hard to read what Akiyama has here. They both either played cards that are neutral enough or have reputations to me that are neutral enough that it is hard for me to judge. Deli goes 7th. Okay. 7528. So we've seen... Okay. So that card was presumably intended to go in 9, because that gives 2838 the same in 8, and 7174 the plus elsewhere. He is 1393. It's currently 5-5. If he has Power Seraph, he has 4. And that would be hard to hold on to. Yeah, if he has Power Seraph, this makes some sense. It's hard to play Power Seraph in 3 there, because 7528 is a pretty bad card for 7. You lose to either a 7 or 8 facing down off the combo. Akiyama had Power Seraph. I think Deli's last card is Power Seraph, and I think he lost. He has the combo here, it's a tie. But yeah, that means he also, Deli definitely lost if going in 3. I didn't read Akiyama on rares, so I forgot that he could have Power Seraph. I was thinking of a 7 or an 8 facing down. I did not consider a 9. Alright. And we have 2838 out of Deli's hand. He has it. Did not see that coming. Oh my god. What a twist. Okay. Did not think he had it. Yeah. And he saved it. Because if he had started in 3 with that, he would have gotten comboed by Power Seraph. He doesn't have the combo. I really like Akiyama's move in 2. I really like Deli's move in 7. This was an excellently played closed game. Really interesting as well. Meeting 5 in 8 with an 8 and a 3 out facing. Really tricky to do. What were Deli's captures there? He could capture with... He had 2 cards with a 7 facing out. A card with a 4 and a card with a 2. So basically he'd have to flip it with a 7 facing out, and that feels very susceptible to combo. Even if Akiyama doesn't have it, we don't know Akiyama's last card. And Akiyama actually has very little combo play in 6 with what we've seen. 6672 only hits 5s. 1393 only hits 4s. 6267 hits 11s, right? Hits nothing. And we didn't see his last card. So I think Akiyama was thinking if he does go 9, I just take it with Power Seraph. Oh, very interesting game. Ooh, I'm gonna pause and I will end the video if they don't return, and if they do return, I will unpause.